Hey everyone, welcome back to the video. So I pick up where I left off in the previous video talking about the Boston Celtics. And we are at the 2017 offseason. We just had the draft. They selected Jason Tatum. So keep in mind this core at this point, now that they selected Tatum, is Isaiah Thomas, newly drafted Jason Tatum, about to sign Gordon Hayward potentially for the offseason, Jaylen Brown on the team, Al Horford, Jay Crowder, Marcus Smart. So, very good group by today's standards. Horford maybe a little questionable, but a lot of those other guys that would have been a competitive team moving forward. But then they made some trades and decisions with their draft capital moving forward that potentially have cost them in this situation now where they could have been a dynasty in this league, but now we're looking at a position where they may be stuck in very good team, but not necessarily a championship level team. So let's go into this a little more. So in the 2017 offseason, they did get Gordon Hayward, but at the time, Kyrie Irving on the Cavs then demanded a trade. And Danny Ainge pulled off a shocker, and he traded team leader and MVP candidate Isaiah Thomas to the Cavs, in addition to Jay Crowder and the future Brooklyn pick unprotected that they were going to get in 2018, all for Kyrie Irving. So I really praised this trade at the time because of just the economics of player value. You're taking a guy, Isaiah Thomas, who was the 60th pick in the draft, and you're trading for a former number 1 overall pick in the draft. That's a very smart decision to make for Danny Ainge, but I think it has really backfired on the team for two reasons that I'm going to get into depth a little more. One, the way Kyrie, the way he's turned out to be in terms of his leadership and how he stepped up into the position, how he created dissension in the locker room, all that. But then two, the reputation that the Boston Celtics organization created, especially with veteran players, given how Isaiah Thomas was traded after an emotional family death and in many ways was mistreated, many people felt was mistreated by the organization. So let's get into it. So the 2017 season had some unfortunate injuries to Gordon Hayward at the first game of the season. He was out for the year. Kyrie Irving played well at first, but he eventually was out for the year with knee injuries. But still, and this is a credit to Brad Stevens' coaching. He's an excellent coach. He takes a team of Terry Rozier, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Al Horford, Marcus Smart, etc., all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals and takes the Cavs to 7 games where they lose in a close game, get 7 at the end. So going into that next offseason, everybody has got a great outlook on the Boston Celtics organization. They've got a lot of young players that just went to the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe even could have gotten to the finals. And they have Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward coming back from injury. So this is essentially the best of both worlds. You got young talent on the rise, and you got veteran star power already on the team too. So everybody felt this team could potentially take down the Warriors dynasty and become the next dynasty in the league heading into the 2020s. So, but how did that actually turn out? Well, unfortunately, the chemistry was not there. A lot of issues were potentially caused by Kyrie Irving and his, I guess for lack of better words, not necessarily buying into Brad Stevens' system, kind of wanting to run his own show. Didn't work. A lot of players that did have bigger roles at the time were upset by how Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward were integrated back into the system. It caused some dissension in the locker room, especially with Terry Rozier, potentially with Al Horford too. So that offseason was one of change. First of all, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So in the 2018 draft, the Celtics took Colin Sexton. Could you imagine if they had not made the Kyrie Irving trade, what Colin Sexton would look like on this team now? Honestly, I think that would almost be a better situation than the one that they're currently in. I mean, maybe they wouldn't have been able to get Kemba Walker, who I'm going to talk about in a sec, if they didn't have Kyrie Irving in the first place. But Colin Sexton looks like he's going to be a very good player. We just saw what he did to the Nets a couple days ago. So we go into that 2018-2019 offseason. Kyrie Irving goes to the Nets. Al Horford leaves as well to the Sixers. And that allows them to get Kemba Walker coming from Charlotte, sent Rozier back to Charlotte in a signed trade. So now you got a new core around Kemba, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, etc. They managed to overperform again, made it to the Eastern Conference Finals that season. But what I really want to highlight is they had draft picks in these upcoming drafts that I think they really mismanaged poorly. And you look at, if they had not have made this Kyrie trade, and they had made a trade for another guy that had been rumored, which there were a lot of them, might have been better for this team. So 2017 was the whole Kawhi situation where he left the Spurs. 2017-2018, we saw how that turned out for the Raptors when they made the trade for him. That could have been Boston. Boston definitely had the assets to do that, especially in 2019-2020 drafts. They could have gotten Paul George. This was a little bit ago, but when he eventually went to the Thunder, but that could have been in play as well. And Anthony Davis could have been in play for them too. But Anthony Davis famously didn't want to go to the Celtics because of how they treated Isaiah Thomas in that trade. So Boston could have pulled off a lot for Anthony Davis. Like even if they had somehow managed to keep Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, could you imagine a core that would include those two plus Anthony Davis? That team would have won the finals probably last year. But it's because of the way that trade went down is why AD didn't come to the Celtics, partially in my opinion. So, but in the 2019 and 2020 drafts, those were the biggest mistakes of why they didn't trade these players. So in the 2019 draft, they had the Sixers pick that they got from the Fultz trade. And they drafted Romeo Langford. Romeo Langford is not in this rotation, even this season. So to me, why are you not trading this pick if this guy is not going to contribute in the immediate future to this team when you could have had an all-star level player? Then in this year's draft, they had 3 first-round picks, and I give it Peyton Pritchard has turned out pretty well, but I see him as role player max. I don't necessarily see him being somebody that can ever become an all-star. No offense to him or anything, and I feel bad saying this because he just got injured yesterday. But they also drafted Aaron Nesmith, who I thought could be good, but he's also not in the rotation either. So maybe these guys will be good players down the line, but if you could have traded these draft picks and have gotten Kawhi, Anthony Davis, etc., even somebody like Steven Adams I think would have been a good trade candidate for this team. Now they're in a situation where the guys that appear to have the most future long-term value on this roster are Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, but they don't have anything else necessarily. And you look at the rest of the East, I think this team looks like the 4th best team in the East for the foreseeable future, with the Nets, the Sixers, and the Bucks, all teams that are ahead of them. So the takeaway from this is Toronto traded for Kawhi, they won a championship. Lakers traded for AD, they won a championship. So the trend in the league is to get all these draft picks, and if you trade for these picks, it'll set you up for success. But if you look at the teams that have actually won it, they've done it with free agent acquisitions. They've done it with trades from their draft capital. So the Celtics should have made a trade for one of these guys, and they didn't. So it's a cautionary tale for teams like Oklahoma City and Houston that are now going into this mindset. You got to trade these picks if you want to get value and eventually win a championship.